Hey there, OTLers. Thanks for joining us today on another podcast. It's Matt, solo in the studio. And I'm coming off a busy week traveling, speaking, and I caught a glimpse of something that really triggered this podcast. And it's got me a little passionate, a little heated, a little confused. I'd like to shout from the mountaintops, but I'm going to just give you a little stance on something. And we're going to title this, What If They're All Wrong About GLP-1? Or maybe you're thinking about this, what if we've been wrong with this medication mindset the entire time? And so I'm just going to start with, I'm not your doctor, I'm not your physician, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an influencer, I'm not Oprah. But we have to step back and just ask some better questions. What if they're wrong? And I was watching this marketing blitz that you're going to see. I saw it on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, and Oprah has a podcast. And I think there's some really bad thinking going on when it comes to some of these new drugs. Now, I'll say this before I go into why this could be a problem or what are some of the side effects. I do believe if you're morbid obese, severe obese, I think there's medications that can tremendously help. They can help you survive. They can help kickstart. They can get you maybe from a position you never thought was movable. Maybe you're 400 pounds or 500 pounds or even 600 pounds, and this is a treatment for you to get to a healthier space. But this is where I stop today. And I ask you as the audience, as your family members, as your community, I don't think we're asking the most important question. When it comes to our health, I've defined this many times. To me, the definition of health is not to be absent of disease or illness. And if we keep calling obesity a disease, still I don't think people are going around thinking, I just want to be absent of obesity. I think we want to be fit, alive, vibrant, healthy. My definition of health is to be our best self. And so the first question we should always ask, any treatment, any protocol, any risk, is do we want to survive or do we want to thrive? What if they're all wrong? Cholesterol, blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, inflammation, autoimmune system, autoimmune issues, cancer, depression, anxiety, gastrointestinal issues, esophageal cancer, cancers of all type. What if they're wrong? And I think about this thriving. I don't believe we're thriving as a society, specifically in the United States. Anxiety's off the charts. Digestive health issues have never been worse. Obesity is 40%. We're spending close to 20% of our dollar on healthcare. You can't look at me and say this is a miracle drug and it's going to cure our health issues. We're not thriving. Now, if you look at the stats and the statistics and the side effects and the medications and all of this literature, it's all about survival. It's all about reduction of risk. I think reduction of risk is a great strategy for many different situations and issues. But I think the true meaning of being healthy is to thrive. And so what if they're all wrong? Think about cholesterol. Statin medication's been around for 20, 30, 40 years. And yet heart disease has never been worse. 47 million Americans take a statin medication with a laundry list of side effects. Yet 40 years ago, we were told that we need to reduce our cholesterol number from 240 to 220 to 220 to 200. They wanted even to 180. And then over the last several years, many cardiologists, amazing new research, we now realize cholesterol is an essential molecule for thriving, and it's really not the risk factor for heart disease. They were wrong. Or blood pressure. Even myself, as I was 10, 11, 12 years old and playing in the health club, and my father is a personal trainer, and he talks about blood pressure and heart disease and atherosclerosis and clogging of your arteries. I mean, these are some things I heard But it was so common to say blood pressure is caused by salt, too much canned food. Blood pressure is not helped by the amount of intake of, you know, this processed sodium. But blood pressure is a nervous system imbalance. Stress is too high, lack of sleep, not moving your body, not having the cardiovascular fitness, uh, all these things, inflammation, oxidation. It's not a disease of salt. And I would say, at 49% of adults have hypertension, it's not because necessarily they're consuming too much salt. There's so much more to the equation. Or type 2 diabetes, 500,000 in 1970, today 40 million. Now here's the craziest thing, here's the scariest thing, here's something that I try to talk at all my presentations. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, it's a good chance that you're pre-diabetic. 90 million out of 330 million, 90 million are pre-diabetic, meaning it's just a matter of time till those pre-diabetics will become type 2 diabetics. I would say we're not solving this disease. 500,000 in 1970, today 40 million. There's more medications, there's more research, there's more funding, but we're not going after the source of the problem. This is disease of the cell. The cell is not functioning. Insulin is not unlocking that cell. Glucose gets elevated. You have type 2 diabetes. Inflammation's never been worse. The root cause of all disease is inflammation. There's a lot of medications for the acute symptomatic inflammation, but we talked about several weeks ago, chronic inflammation. This is a great example of when they were wrong. Vioxx, Celebrex, these COX-2 inhibitors came out, and these are going to be the miracle inflammatory medications. They didn't have any impact on your gut, your gastrointestinal issues, and so you could take these with minimum side effects. Next thing you know, they had to pull it off the market because it was causing stroke, heart disease. Here's a little bit of the science. It was increasing blood clotting. Why? Because your prostaglandins, your inflammation molecules, and your blood clotting molecules were being disrupted and miscommunicated, which was creating this increased blood clot. And so it got past all the trials. It was the new rage. And the next thing you know, the long-term side effects started to show up and they had to remove it off the market. Autoimmune issues, cancer's never been higher. The number one medication in the country in 2024 was a cancer drug, really specifically trying to help the autoimmune system regulate those cancer cells, depression, anxiety, and like I said, gastrointestinal, digestive issues. We've been wrong on many of these. And you may argue and say, well, we've improved in the education and the awareness. Yeah, I'll go with that. There's more awareness. But I would say none of these diseases, and many of these aren't even diseases. Cholesterol is not a disease. This is a symptom. This is one measurement. None of these have improved. We have more medications, more research, and none of them have improved. And when we come back to GLP-1 or obesity, is prescribing this medication going to solve the obesity crisis? Is it going to prevent people from being obese in the first place? Is it going to help people thrive and be their best, healthiest self? That's up for debate. Here's my 3 takeaways. Number 1, whether it's Ozempic, Wegovy, or whatever GLP-1 or glucagon-like peptide, number 1 is there's going to be a downstream effect. We know this. There's a downstream effect. We're starting to see a lot more people come out and say, well, I'm not feeling and performing my best after the first couple months were great. 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. The downstream effect. Here's a couple ideas that I have. How is our vitamin and mineral absorption going to be? So if we're taking a medication that kind of slows down, shuts down your digestion, your appetite, your absorption is going to go down. These vitamins, these minerals, they're not mighty and big. They're small, they're trace. But over time, the body starts to break down. It's not being communicated properly. That's what these minerals do. Think about magnesium, helps us relax. Contraction of the heart, helps us be calm. or calcium when it comes to our bones. When you take GLP-1, will this start to leach out minerals that we already have in our body, or your electrolytes, or zinc, and some of these buzzwords? And so are you going to supplement? As you know, I'm not a huge fan of supplementation, but if you're taking these medications that have these effects, you better think about supplementation. How about the gut microbiome? I find this fascinating, the amount of research and topics and influencers talking about the gut microbiome and how really all we are is a bunch of bacteria. Regulating that gut microbiome with probiotics and prebiotics and symbiotics. But when we take this medication, what's it going to do to our microbiome? If absorption's down, if consumption of food is down, if we're sensitive to some more food, what's going to happen to that microbiome? When you lose weight, when you take GLP-1, you will lose weight. You'll also lose muscle. And so one of the downstream effects is you're going to lose muscle. You're going to lose some of that tone. Muscle is a very powerful organ in the body. And so when you start to lose that muscle, you might be down weight on the scale, but do you have the strength, the stamina, the endurance? Do you look the way you want from a fitness standpoint, from a physical attribute standpoint, muscular tone? No doubt your energy is going to suffer. When you start to decrease calories and absorption, you may not have the energy that you really think that you should. A lot of people maybe didn't have the energy when they had the excess weight, and so maybe it's a false positive, or maybe it's yet to be determined, but I think energy is going to suffer. Sleep. Again, if we don't have absorption of the minerals, if we're struggling with the muscle mass and the tone, sleep's going to be impacted, and then inflammation. Again, the greatest food or the greatest medicine is food. We know if we're in more of an acidic state or a starvation state, acid equals inflammation. I believe inflammation will go up. These are some of the downstream effects that we're already seeing. I've talked to many people that are on some of these medications. Matt, I lost 20 pounds instantly. I'm plateauing, but the rest of my health isn't going in the right direction. Number 2, habits. I think this is the biggest thing that I can't preach enough. Is my opinion is I don't think obesity being categorized as a genetic disease and a disease in itself. I think obesity and being overweight is a symptom. In some cases, food can be an addiction. In some cases, trauma can trigger different biological behaviors. But I think this mistake of saying that it's, out of your control, it's a genetic issue. I heard Oprah say that thin people don't have food cravings. And so it's the first time she realized when you take this medication, she doesn't have these food cravings. This must be what thin people do. Number 1, I've never used the term thin people. I don't think anyone wants to be thin just to be thin. I think we should want to be healthy. It's not about what the scale says or what your waist circumference is. It's how you feel. It's how your health is. And so I think the mistake is not understanding that habits matter. Your sleep habits, your stress habits, how you think, your nervous system. Are you drinking water? What is your intake of water? Are you over-consuming the wrong beverages? Do you drink too much alcohol? Are you eating breakfast? Are you eating the right lunch? Are you planning some of these meals? What's your exercise like? Are you doing just cardio, not any strength? How's your flexibility, balance, range of motion? Can you get on the floor? Can you get off the floor? What have you tried? What have you not created habits around? What kind of rituals can you create? Again, I think the mistake is calling this a genetic disease. Once we call this a genetic disease, now we can prescribe this medication to more people. Once we prescribe it to more people, we lose some of these foundational habits. Think about some of the habits that we've lost. Think about the amount of time we spend on our screens. Think about our food system and how easy it is to eat inexpensive, great tasting food. Now, it's not inexpensive anymore, but it's great taste and in many cases unhealthy. And so these habits are important, and I'm fearful that we're going to lose these habits as we continue to think we can just prescribe a medication. And the last thing is, when do you get off of it? Most people I talk to are go on a statin medication. The doctor never tells them when they're going to get off of it. It's a lifetime medication. Blood pressure medications, once you take some of these medications, especially a beta blocker, it's really hard to get off of it. Your body adapts to it. Your body starts to regulate with these different chemicals in the body. When I talk to type 2 diabetics, I say, do you think it's possible to not be a type 2 diabetic? It's how they define themselves. It's part of the way they think. I'm a type 2 diabetic. It's reversible. It's preventable. And so you go on GLP-1, and all the research says you're going to be on this medication the rest of your life. I think that's a problem. Are we going after the source of the problem? Are we trying to cure the disease, or are we trying to fix the symptom? When we start to just chase symptoms, when we just try to put the Band-Aid, this is where we end. 20% of our healthcare cost, or 20% of our dollars spent on healthcare costs. Every disease, every modern disease is at its all-time high. Medications are off the charts. Hospitals are overwhelmed. People are not thriving. So I think it's time that we kind of look at these. We have to ask the question, what if they're all wrong? Sure, obesity could have some genetic impacts. But how do you disconnect the lifestyle habits that we inherit versus the genetics? I don't know about you, but many of the foods that I like are the foods that my parents like. I don't know about you, some of the movement patterns, some of the mindsets, these are things that I learned. Can those be changed? Absolutely. Are they hard to change? Yes. So genetics play a role. I think the mind, your habits, your beliefs play a bigger role. I think these medications can be a kickstart. Like I said, if you're morbid obese, severe obesity, these might be a miracle to get you healthy, survive, living a longer life. But if you're going to ask my opinion, this is not medications to help you thrive. And that's what I'm all about. If you don't agree with me, I think life is about thriving. In some cases, if there's things thrown your way, yes, you want to play defense. Yes, you want to survive. But if we can shift gears and we can go into a thriving state, I think it's so much better. It's playing the long game versus the short game. The large majority of people that are obese are in the middle. They're not morbid obese. They're not severe obese. These are things that can be moved and changed, and we see it all the time. So as I wrap this up, here's what I want you to think about. Oprah, the big pharma, the scientists, the research, I would be a little bit skeptical. There's many, many medications that have come out as a miracle. Many are lifestyle preventable medications that down the tracks had more issues than they thought. I'm really concerned about gut issues. I'm really concerned about, actually having that health and vitality long term. Are you able to move your body in your 70s, your 80s, your 90s without the muscle mass that you could have if you weren't taking some of these medications? All we know is there's unknown risks, and they're lurking. There's some risks that are lurking that we don't know about. And I truly believe the mind and the body are magical if you give it the right environment, if you give it the right tools. I think you should be asking a couple questions. What do you think the source of obesity, the source of the problem of obesity is? And you got to ask yourself, what is your risk? If you think your risk is high, this might be a great, amazing medication. If you think this risk is low, it's just if you just continue to go down this path, 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 20 pounds, the impact on your joints, the impact on the way you're moving, how you're sleeping, maybe it's causing issues with breathing while you're sleeping and insomnia and all these different challenges. I think we can't keep blaming these genetics because there's so much science around epigenetics. So we got to stop blaming the genetics, and we got to start optimizing our genetics, and that's epigenetics. That's our lifestyle. Those are our choices. Those are our habits. Habits are not easy to change. I think that's one of the things in social media. You got 30 seconds. Do this, do that. Oh, it's so easy. Habits are not easy. 21 days starts you getting a routine. 66 days, maybe you establish the habit. 90 days, maybe you now have a ritual, something that doesn't take a lot of energy. That's not easy, but it's pretty simple. Are you doing the basics? Are you taking care of the basic foundations? And to me, got to ask the question, what if they're wrong? And I think one thing I'm not wrong about is I think most people want to thrive. And many of these medications are not going to put you in that state. We'll see you again next time.